What's up, humans, and welcome to a new Psicoactivo. Okay, so Happy New Year, everybody. I hope you had a great day. I'm recording this on the 31st, but I'm still not sure if it's going to roll out on the 31st later or on the 1st. But I wanted to do this video for a long time, and I want to tell you why. The very first time I heard about Tom DeLonge being interested or invested in the UFO topic, it was actually an interview that I can't find anywhere. If anybody finds it, let me know. Of Grant Cameron talking about his whole understanding of what's going on. And when he talked about Tom, he said that Tom essentially was being used by the intelligence community to roll out a certain level of disclosure, right? But Grant felt to me like he thought that Tom was just a tool within the whole process. And I think that it was a little reductive to talk about Tom in that sense. And since I ever started talking about him on the podcast, the people that I've spoken to about him, the first thing they say is like the Rockstar. And I think that's an old and outdated kind of reaction because by this point, if you don't know how uh, fundamental Tom DeLonge has been for the whole topic since 2017, and even before that, you're not following along on what's happening. Regardless of what you think about him, regardless of whether you think he's part of the cover up or whatever you want to say, he's a psyop, whatever you want to say about him. The truth of the matter is that the man has been reading up on this his entire life. And he wrote three of the nonfiction books about the phenomenon that I think are some of the most consistent with history and the most complete ones. Before those books, which are called Secret Machines, Gods, Man, and War, three different volumes. I could think of maybe a material from Dr. John Mack about abductions, Communion, also about abductions from Whitley Strieber. I could think about pretty much every single book John Keel and Jacques Vallée have written about the phenomenon. And UFOs and Nooks is a very important one. In recent days, recent years, we can talk about American Cosmic. We can talk about skinwalkers at the Pentagon, which is more of like the intelligence community's part history of what's going on. But the one that encompasses everything up to today, I think it's those three books from Tom DeLonge and Peter Lavenda. And when I first started looking at Tom DeLonge going on podcasts and talking about all of this, even way before I thought it was actually there was something to this. I told you before that Commander Fravor's account of the Tic Tac was what made me go like, wait, this is real. But before that, I saw a podcast with Tom DeLonge on Joe Rogan just right before the New York Times article. Like it was like October or November. And I heard Tom talking about all of this. And back then I wasn't on this, like as if it was something worth, checking out. Even the New York Times article, I didn't fully believe it until I heard Commander Fravor because he's a pilot and he described it vividly. And that sold me, right? But when I saw Tom talking to Joe about this, he talked about a lot of stuff that I saw Joe even making fun of him at certain moments and complaining about Tom not being able to say everything. That has a very specific reason to it. It's because Tom DeLonge had already been doing podcasts before that, and he had been saying a lot of stuff that can be considered mythology because he talks about old gods and he talks about how the Greek gods may be connected to all of this. I happen to think it's more like the Vedas because they're a little older. I don't know if the Vedas or the Greek gods are older. I would like to be corrected on that. Please let me know in the comments. But I thought it came from the Vedas, not the Greek gods. I thought the Greek gods came after, but maybe I'm wrong. And I think it's very interesting to see many of the statements that Tom DeLonge did back in the day There's also a K-Rock interview where he talks about hearings in 2019. He predicts hearings, and then we got 3 or 4 hearings, 2 in Congress, another 2 or 3 in the Senate, which I think he predicted those. There had been hearings before with Dr. Stephen Greer, granted, but they didn't have the preponderance and the importance that these had, especially the one from July 2023 with David Grush. And there's a recent tweet where Peter Levenda is defending Tom DeLonge, responding to a tweet, practically discrediting or trying to discredit Tom DeLonge. But if you read the books, I've read all 3 of them already. There's a lot of stuff that he's talking about on those books that is happening right now. And Mr. Peter Levenda, who co-wrote those 3 books, says this in a tweet. He says, people accused Tom of lying since 2015 when he said that he had advisors, and then WikiLeaks proved that he was telling the truth. Tom has not lied, and his claims are being substantiated all the time, even now, 10 years later. The fiction reads less like fiction every day, as was the idea. He's talking about the fiction because there's another set of books he wrote with A.J. Hartley that are supposed to be fiction. And those go into an actual story of what may be going on in the form of a novel. But there's a lot of stuff that is happening right now that is on those books. And I think that it's very interesting. So I want to play a number of these statements that Tom DeLonge has talked about over the years. I'm going to start with perhaps the one about him predicting the hearings back in 2019 on the K-Rock radio station. That was right here.
5, 10 years, 15, 20 years,
I think
20, 30 years.
I think within the next 3 to 5 years, you're going to start hearing rumblings of hearings.
But something more substantial than rumblings of hearings.
No, because this is a big deal.
You're going to hear whispers of rumors and rumblings of hearings, Kevin. Come on, we're almost there.
I think you'll start to hear the pressure building to have congressional hearings on
I
this.
see. Okay.
And then once that happens, things get a little scary because then on a public level, they have to act on this. Now, what does that mean? What are they going to do? Now, I know a lot of things of what we've done, but the idea of those things happening on a public, forum is just, it's terrifying.
It could be chaos.
It could be chaos.
Yeah. So that was Tom predicting the hearings. And now we know what's going on with the hearings. Then he's been doing a few episodes on TTSA, To the Stars Academy, which is his company that he founded. He talks to Jim Semivan, the CIA former spy, about this. And he's talking here about what these so-called entities might be looking for in us. So here's a clip from the TTS talks right here.
I don't know if they need our resources like that. If they have craft that travel through time, I doubt they need more plutonium,
Yeah.
But if they need something with something that's so advanced, like consciousness itself, then how do they grab that? And how do they take that? How do they manipulate that? How do they, I was always struck by that old saying, jealous of God, Satan, Lucifer, and his demons or whatever, fallen angels were jealous of God's love for mankind. Jealous of our immortal soul, our immortal tether, our unified love source. We have this thing where like maybe we don't die. Maybe our physical body is just a shell, just a container. But maybe they don't have that, So maybe this way of an AI system that's it's synthetic and we're organic. It's trying to figure out how to plug into our physical body, how to be a part of our immortality, how to share our consciousness, our conscious experience in this realm.
Now we're moving on to perhaps the boldest claim from Tom DeLonge. But keep in mind that he's read the Bible, the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Egyptian Book of the Dead, the Pyramid text, the Sumerian text, the Mayan and the Aztec creation myths. So he's got a pretty good educated opinion on what might be going on. And keep in mind, he was the one who was attempting to approach people from either the intelligence community or government who were also interested in these ancient history topics that relate to the UFO phenomenon. And when Tom is talking about this, that WikiLeaks reference that Peter Lavenda uses was when Julian Assange and WikiLeaks released all of those emails from Hillary Clinton's server, and there were some really weird emails between John Podesta, who was very high up in the government back then, and Tom DeLonge talking about UFOs. That's when his credibility jumped from being just a rock star who didn't know anything and was just talking out of his ass to someone who was actually talking to people within the government high up about these topics. So that's when all hell broke loose for him. He talks about how stressed he was when that happened. He felt something could even happen to him because that came out. Luckily, nothing really happened in terms of his well-being, but everything did ramp up after that. And pretty much everything that's been happening since 2017 until now is partly because of his effort to make this more public. And when he approached the intelligence community and they found out that he knew some of this, or maybe all of it, I don't know. That's when I realized that we can find out what's happening with information that is not classified. There's a lot of information that is classified that, for example, people like maybe Lou or Jim Semivan or Hal Puthoff, they can't talk about that because they are constantly under pressure. They're constantly they constantly go on polygraphs. They constantly go on skiffs, and they can't talk about it. That's the trick of the skiff, though. They make you go into a skiff so you can't talk about stuff that you discuss there. So any politician already knows this trick that is invited to a skiff. They must decline, because if they know stuff they found out from elsewhere that is not a skiff and it's not from the government, and they talk about it in the skiff, they can't talk about it anymore. And that's not fair. So that's a trick that they use in order to keep people quiet, just so you know. So the more controversial, I guess, for many people who are non-religious, I am non-religious, but I remain open-minded because I grew up reading different type of mythologies. I didn't read the Vedas. That's why I don't know about them that much. I am gonna. But I did grow up reading Greek mythology and the gods. And they're really, really mean gods. And if we're dealing with that, which I don't know, could be possible, I don't know. What I do know is that Tom DeLonge gave the first clues about this and about this phenomenon not being extraterrestrial is during a relatively recent episode on Steve-O's show, where he talks about that there's no evidence that they come from other planets. So where do they come from? This is what Tom said on Steve-O's show about a year ago or so. Here it is.
Can you help us understand what's the significance of UFOs?
They're not coming from, well, I should say it this way. The significance of UFOs is multiple parts, but number one, it's not what you think it is. It's not coming from other planets. The evidence doesn't suggest that.
Interdimensional.
Yes. And the reason is because time is parallel. It's not linear. Or it's not like we start here and go forward in time. Time is side by side, which means everything in the past and the future is existing in this moment, but within different frequencies. So a civilization that's at the end of their technological cycle could build a submarine that changes its voltage and materializes in that same location, just into our timeline. And then it's crazy.
That was well articulated. I like that.
And this builds up to the whole old gods stuff. On Earth Files, Tom DeLonge said this about the Greek gods and crash retrievals. Here it is.
All the different areas of the world have different stories of gods.
and I call that the little g. These are beings that have godlike powers that are meddling in human affairs, but they're not what God is. The idea of whatever the big G, God, that created the universe, whatever force of nature that might be, is different. I was told that there are numerous gods fighting amongst themselves and interjecting themselves into human affairs, that those myths are true. All those ancient stories, those are real. You look at a lot of the studies that you have done, Linda, and what people have followed over the past 30, 40 years. Some people that have worked in these facilities have all talked about ancient hieroglyphics being on these craft, and they look like ancient Greek. I am told that they are ancient Greek, that there is a major connection to the hardware that we have and the ancient Greek gods.
And then on an interview with Linda Moulton Howe, too, he goes deeper into it, talking about even hybrids, which is a highly contended subject within the phenomenon, the hybridization program, that for me is still fiction. But I don't know. The more time passes, the more I confirm that some of the stuff that Tom was talking about, maybe there may be something to it. As I told you, I need to see for myself before I can actually believe it. But Tom said this about the Greek gods. Here it is.
Around the time of the ancient Greek civilization, these gods came in and they passed down a huge amount of knowledge. That's when we got the alphabet, and that's when we really got into all the mathematics and everything that we know that comes with the ancient Greek civilization. I put down a question where I said, it looks to me that these gods came down here and they tampered with the Sumerian civilization, and then they started fighting amongst themselves, and then mankind started to factionalize. Well, something happened with those gods fighting other gods, that we have all those ancient myths of Olympus and the Titans and all of that stuff. After that, it seems to me that the gods stuck around and they started playing up the different religions between mankind. So we can now be so entertained fighting each other that this intelligence can roam around the planet to do whatever else it is it's trying to do, whether it's trying to tamper with the DNA of mankind, or it's trying to figure out how to harness a human being's soul, whatever it might be after, I'm not totally sure. Everything in those early advisory group communications were fine, but when I touched on the idea of hybrids in the human soul is when all the communication stopped on that thread. So I have to look at that as something that I shouldn't have been going into at the time.
And then he also talks about the old gods. And I'm going to play a clip from Red Panda Koala, who is one of the most well-researched UFO historians in recent years. One of the best documentaries about Tom DeLonge comes from him. So I'm going to leave in the description these two documentaries. Red clipped this little snippet where Tom talks about old gods. This is a recent clip from November that Red did put out on his Twitter account. So I'm going to also link Red's Twitter so you can check it out and follow him. But here it is.
The phenomenon is not used. Aliens is not used. It's the others, and when you're taught, the way it's explained to me is that they are gods, with the little g. So the entire UFO phenomenon is about multiple gods that fight amongst themselves and by design factionalize mankind into different religions to step back and let us fight each other, so it has other things that it wants to accomplish, and we don't notice them because we're too involved fighting each other. So, and they know that. So our government knows that. Our government knows that the others are instigating war amongst mankind. But the other issue is that these gods from you got to look back at ancient history and all those stories about gods that came down and did this and that. It's all true. The government is very aware that this intelligence is pitting different countries against each other based on religion, on purpose, and it's a scary scenario. So it's like it's a multiple front war that we're fighting, because now we have to worry about each other and we have to worry about the others.
So based on what Tom is talking about here, we're dealing with maybe dealing with some type of overall story that encompasses religion, science, the intelligence community, governments, wars, belief systems, old gods, old mythology, old ancient history. That specific clip about this hybrids program also makes me even think about the whole storyline about the Nazca mummies, and how back then these beings existed and they have really weird DNA and weird physiology. And it makes me think that some of these might be some type of hybrid experiment. I don't know how to say it. I'm not saying it's true, just saying that that's the narrative that's being investigated at the moment within the Nazca mummies. And I think that we could easily tie it up with what Tom is talking about here. But perhaps the most important aspect of what Tom is talking about here, and some of his statements where that resonate with me the most, it's because he talks about consciousness, and he mentions that humans have like kind of like a transducer, like an antenna, that depending on the frequency you're at, that's what creates the reality around you. And that is exactly what Dr. Jacobo Grinberg's synergic theory is all about: the creation of experience and the experience of reality. And in an interview he did back in 2023, when he was promoting Monsters of California, the movie he directed, he talks specifically about this with Mr. McCarthy, who's a movie critic that I like very much. And he said this, and it's exactly what Dr. Grinberg talks about in his work. Here it is.
Well, the more you look into kind of the tip of the spear with the studies on consciousness, we're realizing that consciousness doesn't exist within the mind. Consciousness is a permeating force. It's literally like Star Wars. It's like the Force, you know, and it can be used for good or bad. So your body and your brain, your entire being is what they call a transducer of your environment. So you're like an antenna, and you're tuned into a radio station, and whatever you choose to think, or whatever station you choose to tune into is going to come through you and emanate out, and physical matter is created for an experience. So literally whatever you feel and think, quantum physics is now discovering that your physical reality is based on your thoughts. And in the movie, it's very much kind of got this backstory of, we have to learn that, you know, fear and happiness and love and all these different things that we choose to dwell on is what's going to make your life experience. It's not a product of your thoughts. So
as you can see, and if you have been following my channel too, Tom seems to know that this whole story, this whole phenomenon, it is multifaceted. It is very versatile. It has multiple storylines. It is not just one. And it's all moving towards, apparently, some type of event horizon, some type of singularity that we're all following now. And I just want to say that I don't know if I'll ever get to talk to him, Tom, but if I do, I think we're going to talk about a lot of stuff that I've been covering in my channel, specifically the one about consciousness and what he talks about here, that we all create our own reality. And I still think to this day that if we get to understand that part of the whole overall phenomenon, I think that whatever war is happening or whatever disagreement is happening between other intelligences with us in the middle, none of that is going to matter, because the deal is that we need to take control of our own future and our own present as well. And yes, I do believe there is a consciousness war going on right now. And it's been going on since these three religions were created. Because I don't know if you guys have noticed, but over the last 2,000 years, these religions and ideology and difference of opinion has been the main reason we've been and conflict, constant conflict all the time between different factions, different races, different religions too, different political ideologies. All of this, I think it's part of one major over-encompassing war that has been going on, a philosophical war too. And I think that the more people realize that this is being done in order to keep us separated, that entanglement that Tom talks about and Chris Bledsoe has talked about before too, and Jacobo talks about, and he even did that experiment, the transfer potential. That entanglement will be more possible and more real as soon as more people become aware of what is actually happening. That I think it's, at this point, if you're perceptive, you've noticed it too. So I think that's the first order of business for all of us. It is not to find out about the nuts and bolts of it. It is part of it, yes. New science is part of it too, yes. But I think that the first order of business is to realize that we're being played to stay angry at each other, to stay in constant conflict with each other. And we need to wake the fuck up. That is what I think needs to happen, especially for this year, 2025. We need to wake the fuck up. And I think this is helping. All of this is helping. And the only maybe piece of advice or maybe opinion that I would say is, whenever you feel like you want to call someone out on something that you don't agree with, or whenever you feel this gut reaction towards someone that wants you to dismiss them or disrespect them in any way, think twice before you do that, and think where that sensation or that feeling comes from, and marinate on it. And you will more than likely realize that it's not even coming from you. And that if you go through that sensation or through that feeling, that will put you in a different type of frequency and state of mind that is only going to drive you towards more of that, you know? And why would you want to stay on that? Why won't you, instead of, when you hear something that it's a difference of opinion to yours, why don't you, instead of reacting in that specific way, maybe be more inquisitive and try to ask yourself, why do I think differently? Why does this person think differently? Maybe trying to understand where this person comes from, why they think so differently than you, but from an inquisitive place, not from a reactionary place. If we start with that, we can just go little step by step, and then I think that we can maybe find some common ground. That's what I truly believe, and that's what I think the first order of business should be for everyone. I hope that my little tribute to Tom makes you think a little bit. Why do you think he talks about these gods? Why do you think he talks about these beings not being from outer space? Where do you think they're from? If they're not from outer space, if you think they exist, if you think they don't exist, why do you think they don't exist? Let me know in the comments. I want to know. And thank you for all the support. If you want to support the channel, I want to ask you to please hit the subscribe button so we can get to 12,000, maybe 20,000 by May or something. That'd be cool. And if you want to support the channel in any other way, I'm going to ask you to take a look at the description. There's a bunch of links there. Thank you for the support. Also, comment, share, hit the like button. Thank you. And if I ever get a chance to talk to Tom, I will let you guys know so we can maybe get a couple of questions in related to some of this. But you already know what I'll talk to him about. That's just me, you know? So yeah, that's the first video for the start of 2025. I hope everybody gets to fulfill their dreams. And I also hope that we get more clarity on all of this from an official standpoint, governments and the Catholic Church and all of those entities that remain in power today still. We need clarity. We still do. We've been getting little by little, but that philosophical war is never ending. So you guys know that what we're up against. So yeah, and that's it for me today. I'll see you guys on tomorrow's video. Bye.